Hi, I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, President Obama formally signs executive action on immigration while urging Congress to send him an immigration bill.
And how will President Obama's immigration plan impact immigrant families in San Diego and Imperial counties? I'm Peggy Pico with a look at what's next from both sides of the issue. Then insight from the filmmaker about his new documentary about Sinaloa drug cartel leader El Chapo Guzman, his fans, and the surprising response to his arrest.
When contemplating insects and religion, your first thought might be plagues of locusts and harbingers of doom.
Well, as an entomologist, it's hard for me to say they deserve a bad reputation.
We'll show you some of the more positive images of bugs from the new King Tut exhibit in town. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. President Obama signed his executive action on immigration today while calling for Congress to pass an immigration reform bill. Tracy Brown of the Associated Press brings us the latest.
On the campaign trail again, President Barack Obama drumming up support in a Las Vegas high school, right back to where he launched his drive to overhaul immigration in 2013.
Las Vegas, I've come back to Del Sol to tell you, I'm not giving up. I will never give up. I will never give up.
The executive actions are designed to make nearly 5 million immigrants illegally in the U.S. eligible for protection from deportation and for work permits, mainly covering parents of U.S. citizens and of legal residents, as long as the parents have been in the U.S. for 5 years or more. But Obama's actions also would change enforcement priorities by emphasizing the deportation of new illegal arrivals and criminals. His decision to bypass Congress infuriating Republicans.
With this action, the president has chosen to deliberately sabotage any chance of enacting bipartisan reforms that he claims to seek. And as I told the president yesterday, he's damaging the presidency itself.
Republicans accusing the president of vastly exceeding his authority, a point some political analysts disagree on.
I think what Obama is doing is very consistent with what other presidents have done in this area.
In the days to come, West says Republican leaders are going to be facing their own challenges.
Their base is so upset that there's likely to be some very extreme reactions. There are people who are arguing Obama has violated his constitutional oath. There are some who are already talking about shutting down parts of government.
The White House is enlisting immigrant advocacy groups across the country to raise awareness of the president's plans. Without a big buy-in from immigrants seeking work permits, advocates fear Obama's executive order could be easily overturned by the next president. Tracy Brown, Associated Press.
Here in San Diego, more than 24 people gathered on the steps of St. Joseph's Cathedral downtown to speak about the impact President Obama's immigration action will have on local families. Some were less optimistic.
A lot of my family members are still left out. There are some family members who will be able to benefit, but this is definitely not enough.
San Diego Unified School Trustee Richard Barrera was more upbeat.
It's a day of relief, a temporary relief, but it's a day that signals what is possible if our elected officials in Washington do their jobs.
There's an estimated 300,000 immigrants living and working in the shadows in San Diego County. Roughly half of them would be eligible for temporary protections from deportation under the president's executive order. Immigrant rights attorney Tammy Sumantha says the next step is getting paperwork together to prove you've lived here for more than 5 years and don't have a criminal record.
This can be in the form of bank statements, rental statements, or rent receipt that you have been paying. Also, it can be utility bills, it can be school records if you're going to school.
But because there is no application to qualify yet, and the White House doesn't anticipate having one until the spring, fraud is a major concern. So faith, community, and legal service providers are stepping up to provide resources and information.
We are ready, we are prepared, and we are moving forward to ensure that every single San Diegan that may qualify for the president's announcement gets the legal support that they need.
Now, there is a website for more information on legal resources. You can find it at immigrantsandiego.org. Meanwhile, the debate over immigration reform continues. Peggy Pico has that part of the story.
Joining me with what's next and the impact of the president's actions on immigration in the San Diego region are my guest, immigration attorney Lilia Velasquez and Todd Garcia Van Boxta with the Latino American Political Association. Welcome to Evening Edition.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Now, Lilia, the president's executive action temporarily blocks deportation of about 5 million people living in the U.S., and of those, about 1.5 million in California, I understand, could be impacted by this. When does the president's actions go into effect, and who's eligible?
Well, we don't know yet when the application period will begin. We have been told that it's going to take about 180 days, which is 6 months. For the expansion of DACA for the Dreamers, that can come as soon as 90 days. But who's eligible are parents who have U.S. citizen children who are either U.S. citizen children or children who are permanent residents, regardless of age. It does not cover the parents of the Dreamers who already received deferred action. So there was a lot of disappointment that those parents were left out.
Yeah, and that brings me up to some of the concerns you're hearing here in the San Diego region and questions you're getting in regards to this. There was some concern over that. What other concerns are you hearing?
The concerns is, if my husband was removed, was deported, had a voluntary departure within the last 5 years, is it safe for me to apply? Am I going to be surrendering him? If I committed a minor violation, is that going to disqualify me? Well, what are the documents that we need to present to demonstrate this physical presence since January 1st of 2014? So there are a lot of practical questions in terms of, are they eligible? Is it safe to apply? What's going to happen after the 3 years?
Okay, and I want to get to Todd on this one. President Reagan, President Bush, other presidents have used executive actions to deal with immigration issues. But some Republicans are vocally opposed to this. In fact, today, Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio filed a lawsuit over it, which seems to be getting some press. What is your reaction to Obama's use of executive action on immigration?
Well, in my sense, I'm quite disappointed, actually, that he did this unilaterally. I mean, and just 2 weeks ago, he said he looked forward to working with the new Congress, and I'm not exactly sure what changed in the last 2 weeks because the new Congress isn't even seated yet. And I think what's disappointing is I think this actually makes a comprehensive reform bill harder to happen. I think that I'm afraid that the Senate bill is probably dead because there's no incentive now for the Republicans to do an all-encompassing bill because, yes, what the president did last night takes care of a lot of concerns and the concern of separating families. So if that's handled, then why, now Republicans can go piece by piece, and maybe that's not exactly the best way to go.
And let me follow up with that with both of you. I'll start with you, Todd. So the Senate bill that President Obama clearly said, pass a bill if you don't like this. It's been out for a year and a half, and the Republicans haven't done anything. I shouldn't say the Republicans. Congress hasn't done anything about it. So where could it go forward from here with following this action?
Right. It's unfortunate because, yes, what we've learned, and I think the election was part of that, is that there's lots of bills that sat in Congress, both on the House side and in the Senate, that went nowhere. And I think that's why the voters wanted a change, to say, hey, we got to do something. There's lots of problems that we need addressed, and so we do that. Unfortunately, I guess this problem couldn't wait another month or so for the new Congress to be seated, and I kind of question if it was so important to do in this flux time between the new Congress and now, why didn't he do it 3 months ago or 3 years ago or 6 years ago?
And that's something that's being discussed. Lilia, let me follow up with this for you. So if this is temporary action, what do you think needs to be done to address immigration reform permanently?
Well, I think that the president has basically given the Congress a framework from which to work with. He cannot pass legislation. This is only a policy. It's a temporary policy. He wanted to do it as soon as possible and before, obviously, the Congress is seated in January. But the Congress has refused to act. And the question that we ask is, how long is reasonable enough? How much time do we give the Congress to do its job?
I'm sure we will find this out in January, and unfortunately we are out of time. So Lilia Velasquez and Todd Garcia Van Boxtel, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nearly 40,000 ballots have been cast, but the race for the seat on Chula Vista's City Council could come down to one. KPBS Metro reporter Taryn Minto joins us with an update on the tie vote between the candidates John McCann and Steve Padilla. All right, Taryn, what's the latest count in the race?
McCann and Padilla are locked at 18,450 votes each. Beginning Monday, the Registrar of Voters will manually review the ballots from all of Chula Vista's precincts to confirm this. The office has until December 2nd to certify the votes for this race and every election in the county.
And what will happen if the review confirms it's a tie?
The method to break the tie is up to the Chula Vista City Clerk. The law says a tie will be decided by lot, which means a coin toss or even drawing from a deck of cards.
Oh my goodness, how are the candidates reacting to all this?
I talked to both candidates earlier today. McCann said he was surprised by the tie, but is still optimistic it'll go his way.
We're still hoping that there's still some votes out there that maybe they didn't count that'll be for us.
When I reached Padilla by phone, he said he was hopeful the reconciliation process will identify a winner.
I think the chances that it ends up a flat-footed tie is probably not great.
KPBS reporter Taryn Minto. San Diego police arrested a 17-year-old in connection with a campus lockdown at Torrey Pines High School. It happened yesterday after a threatening post was discovered on the social media app Yik Yak. It turned out to be false. Police are still trying to determine if the teenager was responsible for a second campus threat at Canyon Crest Academy. No word on what led police to the teen. Now, this isn't the first time messages on the anonymous app have prompted closures at schools. KPBS education reporter Matt Bowler joins us with that part of the story. First off, Matt, tell us, what is Yik Yak?
It's a new kind of social media mobile app. It's an anonymous app. They let users post comments and responses to comments without a username. Now, if you download the app and start reading, you won't know who posted what because there aren't any usernames. But police say the perception of anonymity doesn't match the reality.
Perceived anonymity on the internet can cease the moment someone makes a threat.
And how did police find out who posted that threat?
Well, SDPD isn't sharing what evidence they have, but I can tell you that Yik Yak isn't 100% anonymous. If you go to their website and check out the official Yik Yak privacy statement, you'll see they say, we may automatically collect the following information about your use services, access time, device ID, application ID, and other unique identifiers. Now, with that information, it is possible to find out who posted what.
So does the site, Matt, do anything to protect its users?
Yeah, they have rules about not bullying other posters, not posting private information, and not being offensive. They also try to limit use near schools, and this one's very interesting. If you allow the app to see your location, and all smartphones give users a way to let apps know exactly where they are, it's called location services, geolocating, or geotagging. And if you let Yik Yak know where you are and you happen to be close to a school, the app makes it impossible for you to see updates or a feed. However, all you have to do is tell it that you're a couple blocks away from the school, and you can go ahead and post away. And I did that for a spot near Torrey Pines High School, and that's the high school that was closed down recently because of this incident. And after that, the post about nothing but posts about the school. So the lesson from this is that kids are definitely going to find a way around these apps restrictions, and you're definitely still responsible for what you say online.
KPBS reporter Matt Bowler. A documentary opening today in Chula Vista raises questions about the arrest of Sinaloa drug cartel leader Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Peggy Pico talks with the filmmaker.
Mexican authorities arrested El Chapo in February. He was the leader of the Sinaloa drug cartel, which is believed to be the source of most of the illegal drugs smuggled into the United States and responsible for drug smuggling tunnels along the San Diego border. My guest, Charlie Min, his film, S. El Chapo, explores the surprising response to the arrest of the cartel leader. And Charlie, welcome to Evening Edition.
Thank you for having me.
Now, since El Chapo was taken into custody, there has been speculation about this idea that the man arrested really isn't El Chapo. What are some of the reasons you heard for this argument?
4 reasons. A, not a single shot was fired during his capture in Mazatlan. Secondly, where were his 300 armed guards that protect him at all times? They were absent during the capture. Number 3, why is a billionaire like Chapo, who's been in Forbes magazine, staying at an $89 a night condominium? And 4, other than the Guerrero incident with those 43 students still missing, the violence hasn't changed in Mexico whatsoever. There has not been any rival cartel trying to come into Sinaloa's turf and try to take it over. We haven't seen that.
Do you think there could be another reason for that? Like they're laying low and seeing what happens to them?
Well, I think after 9 months, it's easy to make a few opinions, and I don't think it's him.
Okay. And people can watch your film to find out more of sort of these going a little bit more in depth as to that reasoning. El Chapo, though, is wanted in 7 U.S. cities, including San Diego. What is the U.S. government saying about if they have the right man or not?
Well, the USDA Intelligence and Homeland Security assisted on the arrest, and there really hasn't been much word about Chapo since it happened. Perhaps the U.S. found out it's not him, and they're too embarrassed to admit it. If it's not him, this would be the greatest embarrassment in the history of law enforcement, and the United States would certainly be involved with that embarrassment.
For Mexico, you're thinking, but then also for the U.S. Now, your documentary captures a video protest calling for El Chapo's release. Has this amazing video of these people, you know, really wanting him to be released, even though he's a man that has been accused for the responsibility of the deaths of 80,000 Mexican people. Tell us more about the support that he has.
Well, there are a couple of factors here, Peggy. A, I heard that these people who were protesting were paid to protest, $30 a person. Whether that's true or not, I'm not exactly sure, but that's what I heard. The Mexican people tell me he's so revered, despite the murders, because he provides for the poor. He's that Robin Hood social bandit symbol that Mexican people love. He represents wealth and power, something their own government couldn't provide for them. So he builds hospitals, churches, schools. He provides for the poor. But let's not mistake ourselves about this. Chapo Guzman, that money is protection money. I mean, I think that's blood money. The money's not green. It's red for his own protection so that people won't turn him in.
Do you think, because I said the interviews in your documentary, do you think that the people just believe this, or do you think that his actions are really true? Has he created more jobs? Has he helped the community?
No doubt. He's donated millions to the local economy. You have the good Chapo and the bad Chapo. You have the bad Chapo that his cartel kills people. Then you have the good Chapo that provides for the poor.
Let's get back to the 43 students and the escalating protests that are going on with the missing Mexican students. You said that violence is not down overall.
You mean
in Mexico?
Violence, well, it hasn't really shifted, either up or down.
Since his arrest?
Since his arrest, correct.
Okay. Why do you think the weapons charges were dropped last week against El Chapo?
Peggy, I'm not aware of that charge.
Okay.
Being dropped.
Oh, they were dropped. So they were dropped last week, and there's a speculation that other charges like laundering and money laundering and racketeering might also be dropped. So do you know where his case stands now?
Not exactly. I just know that from talking to law enforcement, there's varying stories here whether the extradition papers have indeed been put on Mexico's desk or not.
I see.
He has to finish his original sentence. He served 40% of his sentence back in the 90s before he escaped in 2001. He's got 12 years left to go on that. But despite that, I'm hearing now that Chapo may get let go on a technicality. You cannot trust the Mexican officials at all. And in my opinion, you cannot trust the U.S. officials. If you Google U.S. government, Sinaloa cartel, we're together.
Oh, okay. We're not going to touch on that one right at the moment because we don't have enough time. But let me ask you this. Why did you make this film?
Any excuse, reason, opportunity I have to shine a light on the 120,000 murdered Mexicans, I'll do that. 90% of the people in our country are disconnected to the Mexico violence. The illegal drug users that's contributing to the Mexico violence, I would say 90% of them do not know by consuming illegal drugs, they're contributing to the violence in Mexico. So it's to create awareness.
All right. Well, filmmaker Charlie Min, thank you very much for joining us. And I want to let folks know that the documentary S. El Chapo opened today at the Rigo Rancho Del Rey Stadium 16 in Chula Vista. More information is on our website, kpbs.org.
President Obama issues a controversial executive order on immigration reform. A huge water recycling project is finally approved in San Diego. And who said changing lives and neighborhoods was easy? I'm Mark Sauer. Join me for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30. San Diego Natural History Museum just opened its King Tut exhibit. Its curator incorporates some positive images of bugs into religion. KPBS Arts and Culture reporter Beth Accomando takes us to the exhibit.
Next month, when Ridley Scott's new film Exodus opens, bugs will once again be maligned as harbingers of doom.
When you think about religion and insects, your immediate go-to is going to be the plagues of locusts and the plagues of flies associated with the Old Testament.
Dr. Michael Wall is curator of entomology at the Nat.
Watch it, he is fast. I love that.
He gets a bit defensive about the little critters he studies when people try to give them a bad rap.
As an entomologist, it's hard for me to say they deserve a bad reputation. But certainly you can understand, based on their natural history, why these insects might be associated with harbingers of doom, because either they're feeding on blood, they're feeding on carrion, so therefore they're associated with death, or they're feeding on your crops, which of course is taking away your livelihood. But then we have other groups that are represented a little bit more positively. Beetles are generally represented quite positively within religion.
Which leads us back to ancient Egypt.
We're here at the San Diego Natural History Museum in our new exhibit on King Tut, about the discovery of King Tut, and we're standing next to one of the big wow pieces within the exhibit, and right next to me you can see here a representation of an insect within this exhibit, and we see here what is often referred to as the sacred scarab beetle. And you'd be hard-pressed to walk through this exhibit without encountering a scarab beetle along the way. They're everywhere within the hieroglyphics, repeated over and over again. This is a winged scarab, but clearly those wings are much more representative of a bird's wings. And so sometimes they would kind of do animal mashups.
One of the reasons the scarab is so prevalent in King Tut's tomb is that it's part of his name.
So the cartouche it's supposed to be emblematic of a circle of rope. So you can actually even see how it could be a knot tied down here. And the circle of rope is to protect the name of the person who's inside of it. And we've got 3 different hieroglyphics here. One here represents all, and then the scarab represents form or manifestation, and these 3 little dots make it plural, so all manifestations or forms of the sun god Ra.
Wall pulls out examples of some real scarabs from the Nat's extensive collection.
There is a particular scarab that is thought to be the representation that the Egyptians based their sacred scarabs off of, and they were dark like this.
But once again, you'll find Hollywood movies trying to give bugs a bad name by depicting the scarab in various mummy films as lethal or cursed.
Contrary to what the popular movies might depict, what we actually see when we look back into the mythology and the religion of Egypt is that the scarab was associated with the transport of the sun across the sky. And you might wonder, why scarabs? Why are scarabs in charge of rolling the sun across the sky? And it's because they're not just scarab beetles, but more specifically, they're dung beetles that, according to our natural history research, we know take these balls of dung and they roll them up and they lay eggs in them. And so the rolling symbolizes the rolling of the sun, but then also out of these balls of dung, out of this earth, this grossness of dung, emerges these new scarabs, and this is the metamorphosis or the rebirth from dust. But then on top of that, there is a scorpion goddess associated with Egyptian religion, and that's probably the origin of actually the movie. The Scorpion King is associated with actually particular kings that very much felt like this goddess was kind of in their wheelhouse, protecting them. And there's images of this scorpion goddess inside of our exhibit, and she's one of 4 goddesses that helps protect the canopic jars of King Tut. The literal translation of her name is she who can open the throat, but it can also be interpreted as she who can close the throat, because the stinging from a scorpion causes your body to have a reaction that closes up the throat, and that's often the way that people would die.
Wall says you often see this more positive imagery of bugs in religions that use animals as representations of their gods.
And there is a field, not a very large field, but a field of what we call cultural entomology of this very thing. How do insects play into popular culture, ancient cultures, etc.? And they all, for the most part, tie back to the natural history. And what it tells me is that these cultures were very observant of what was going on in their natural environment, and they incorporated these insects into their stories and their cultures and their fireside tales and their religion, and it was based off of their actual observations. There's some examples that aren't necessarily spot on, but they're pretty close.
And that's how a simple dung beetle became a sacred scarab. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
By the way, the Tut exhibit continues at the Nat through April. Talking about weather now, the showers have moved on. Morning clouds along the coast tomorrow. Temperatures in the upper 60s, then back into the 70s by Monday. A mix of sun and clouds for the inland valleys, warming into the 70s. Cooler, mostly clear in the mountains the next few days, then mostly in the upper 70s for the desert, slightly cooler on Monday. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.